Welcome everyone to this month's Coffee Break webinar. We're going through our industry trade series at the moment, so we're highlighting usage of iTWO costX in particular industry trades. So we've got lots of other videos on our website, on our webinars page, on our YouTube channel. So if there is a particular trade that you are interested in, then I'm sure we've got a video for you. If not, get in touch and we'll be happy to talk something through with you. My name is Matthew Donnison. I'm a chartered surveyor and also an iTWO costX consultant. So before I carry on, just a little bit around the iTWO costX product. You can see the different versions we have available there. We have different flavors of the software with different features and functionality, so you can choose a version that's right for you, whether you need 3D capability or just 2D, whether you need takeoff only or whether you need the workbooks as well. And it's also worth noting the viewer at the end there, so you can share your information with third parties and they can download that viewer for free from our website. The key features of the product is that we have the inbuilt measurement engine, makes it really easy to measure from various 2D and 3D file formats. We have an auto revisioning tool to easily track changes between different drawings or models and then update the quantities. We have a report writer integrated into the system, so you can output the reports in the formats that you require for your business or for your customers in the formats they request the information. The workbooks are integrated. It's not a piece of software where you've got lots of different programs, you have to do imports and exports between them. Everything is integrated within it and it is live linked, so if you change your quantity on the drawing, it will change the workbook for you. The entire process is paperless, really cutting down on effort of shuffling paper around, particularly in the remote working, which is popular at the moment. And it also allows for collaboration with your team, multiple people on the same project at the same time. We've got a huge variety of files that we can support. So there's just a few examples on there. Bringing in things like IFC files. We have DWF support. You can bring in RVT files. You can bring in PDFs, JPEGs, all sorts of different formats. And then equally on the other side, you can export your information out into these various formats. We also have links to other pieces of software through our API, and we also have our iTWO benchmark product, which is a cloud-based benchmarking application. And you can compare your projects. So if you're working on an estimate, you can do a comparison and see where it sits in relation to your historical data, or you can also produce conceptual estimates from that previous data. So our last webinar that we put up was around carpentry. So it's a really comprehensive webinar, so if you've not seen that, go and have a look. My colleague goes through how to use iTWO costX to measure floors and walls, amongst other things. So there's the link there if you want to go and have a look. But what I'm going to focus today is around pipework and process equipment. It's a topic that comes up quite often with our customers. Obviously those in the oil and gas sector and other sectors as well, sewage plants, that sort of thing. So if you do have to measure pipework, process equipment, pumps, valves, that sort of thing, I'm just going to go through some quite simple examples today just to show you how you can set up the system. And of course what I'm going to show is just one option. There's lots and lots of different ways to use iTWO costX to best suit your needs. So I'm going to show you how to measure on a PDF drawing in this case, because quite often my customers say they just get the PDF drawings that they need to measure from, so I'm going to use that as an example. The PDF drawing I'm going to use actually has two different scales on it, so I'll show you how to deal with that. I'll have a look at how I've set up some of my dimension groups and use the custom formulae within them. And then finally move on to the workbook and I'll show how everything links through nicely and it gives me all the information I need all in one place. So without further ado, I'll jump over into my presentation. So here we have an example building that I've already created, and I've just put a drawing in, I've set some dimension groups up, and I've also set a workbook up, and I'll take you through that in a second. First thing with this, if you look at this drawing, it is a PDF. and we can see that actually we have a couple of different scales on there. Now, this is a fairly common thing. If you're dealing with DWGs, then the DWG, the viewports within it, and these would be called viewports, each one a viewport, typically deal with that scale themselves. So if you're dealing with a DWG, you typically don't have to worry about it. Of course, it's worth checking each viewport to make sure that the scales are correct. So in a case like this, I can zoom in. We can use our measure distance tool, which is on the ribbon up here, or you can press the M key, and I can just do a quick check and say, is that correct? And I can check each viewport and see. So this drawing has been set up and calibrated as a 1:50 scale. Now, if I jump over here and do another check by pressing my M key again, that rather than being 6 meters is coming in at 4.157. So that's obviously incorrect because it tells me the scale should be 1:72 rather than a 1:50. Now, the easiest way to deal with that is to add the drawing in a second time with a separate scale. But what you don't want people to do is to measure the wrong section from the wrong drawing. And that's where our working area comes in. So I'm going to go to my working area here and say set working area. On this drawing, which is my 1:50 scale, I'm going to say I just want people to measure that section. And you'll see the rest of the drawing is now grayed out. It won't let me measure anything over here. It only lets me measure within the working area that I've set. So that was the heater assembly there. And then what I'll do is add it in a second time. So I'll just press my add drawing up here, find my heater assembly drawing, and I'm just going to give this heater assembly, I'll just call it number 2 for ease, but of course you can call it whatever you want to. If you knew what the scale was, then you can of course put it into this section here, but what I'm going to do is calibrate the drawing. Now of course we have used this section previously, so what I'm going to do is say set working area, this time for this section of the drawing. Of course it then grays everything else out, and then I'm going to go to calibrate my x-axis. I click once there, and I'll type in my 6,000 millimeters, and that is then set up. So if I want to do some check measures, again I can press the M key on the keyboard, and I can say, what's the distance between there, and it's near enough 6 meters. Of course it depends on the drawing and exactly where you're measuring from and what you've calibrated to and how good your calibration was. But we're near enough, we're good enough for the purposes that we're going to be looking at today. So you can see on the left here, I've already got some example dimension groups set up. I've set them up into an example folder structure. The folder structure that you want to use is of course completely up to you. I've, at a fairly high level, I've just got pipework and valves. You may have more, you may have them differently, and then within that I've broken them down. I'm just calling them material X because on the drawing I've not really looked into whether we're dealing with carbon steel, stainless, or any other exotic materials. So you may have different categories for your different types of material, or depending on your project needs. Within here I've got the 2 different sizes. So I've got DN200, I've got DN150, and that's based on the information that's in the drawing. If I zoom in here, you'll see that I've got some DN200, and somewhere else over here on the side view, I've got 150s visible. Now in kind of old terms, we're talking about 6-inch or 8-inch pipework there. But of course, you can set up these categories how you want them. So using the pipework as an example, my DN200, I can double click that group, open it up and see what we've got. You'll see that I've just got a fairly basic name in there. I've got the folder. I'm measuring these as a length because this is the pipework we're talking about. The other items are a count. You can see my elbow and my flanges are number rather than meters, so I'm doing them as a count. I've chosen a color. So in this case, I'm doing the DN200s as purple and the 150 is green. I've set a weight unit of measure as kilograms. Then if I jump to my custom quantities, you can see I've got a couple of custom examples in there. These custom quantities allow us to calculate additional information at the same time. So in a case like this, I want to know on the drawing how many hours each particular item is going to cost me for my own kind of review purposes. Another example, use of custom quantities would be something like with a concrete slab. You can say how much rebar have I got in the slab. You put in a rebar custom quantity and then you put in a formula that you wanted to use. So with rebar you might use volume times by a ratio kilograms per meter. But in this case I'm just having the hours. So if I jump across to my measured dimensions tab next, you'll see that I have workshop hours, site hours, which are my custom. And if I've got more custom fields, because you can have loads and loads of those, they will also appear in this list. So within here, I've gone in, I've put in my my weight. So I'm using constants within here. You can type the constants in if you know them. So I just had a reference chart of different information related to steel pipework. But if I click on the expression editor button here, it opens up and I've got links through to things like constants. So I could have all of that information available within here for me to pick and choose as I'm building up these formulae. So that's the weight. So in this case, this pipework, the DN200, I'm saying it's 42 kilos per linear meter. I'm saying for every linear meter, it takes me 2.5 man hours in the workshop and it's 1.75 man hours on site. Of course, your productivity norms that you'll be using will vary from company to company and project to project. But these are just some examples. I wouldn't read into too much what I've put in there because it's just some very, very basic dummy data for the purposes of this demonstration. So that's the pipework there. If I look at, say, the flange, very similar. This time it's a count. And if I go to measure dimensions, I'm saying I've got a weight of the flange and I've got the man hours for installation preparation. Down below that, I've also got a valve set up because I've just got a few example valves on here. So I can open this up, go into measured dimensions, and again you can see what I've allowed in there for the weights and site hours. There's different ways to structure your takeoff. For example, I've got my flange there and I'm just counting the flanges. You could have custom quantities in that flange section for like gasket sets, bolts within there, and you say, each time I have a flange, give me 8 number bolts, or obviously depending on the size of a flange that you're talking about and the nominal diameters, it will vary. So you can include that information within there. You can certainly break it out separately if you want to, but what we're trying to do is just speed up the process. So the more you can do within one dimension group, the better. So using this as an example, let's go in here first of all. So if I was to be measuring my DN200 pipework, if you've got simple straight sections, now I'm just going to go into my line mode within my dimensions ribbon at the top. If you've got simple straight sections here, so I've got a straight section between two flanges, I can click on that line and you can then see that line is selected. Same for the one above, I can click on the middle or the edge. When it comes to something like this, again, this line here runs between a flange and an elbow, so I can just click on that and measure that. In actual case, sorry, I've done that as a 200, but it should be a 150, but this gives me a good opportunity to show how to move things around. So I can right click and say move dimensions to another dimension group, and that should be a 150 pipe rather than a 200 pipe. And same for these as well, actually. I'm just going to move those. So I will pretend I've done that on purpose. Now, that's sort of dealing with simple things where it goes between one and the other. If you need to, say you've got something over here where you may have breaks in the pipework, you can switch into point mode equally as well. So again, I'm still in my DN200. I'm going to switch into point mode, and for this length of pipe here, I'm actually just going to do it in point mode between 2 points. So I'm just going to mark it down to there, and you can see I've done that in points. So you can switch between line mode and point mode depending on what you're doing, and there's no problem jumping between those two. Hovering over that length, you can see all of the attributes that are associated with it. So the pipework length itself is 9.8 meters. I've got the area there, I've got the weight of the pipework, I've got the workshop hours, and I've got the site hours. So, all of that information I can retrieve just by simply hovering over the lengths of pipe. So that's, say, measuring some basic pipe. And again, let me come down here. I can do some more. So here's another good example. This length of pipe runs underneath my heater assembly. So what I'm going to do in this case, I'll do it in point mode, and I'll say measure between there and there. Next, if I were to do some of my fittings or flanges, elbows, that sort of thing, I can just click on those as a group. So I'll click on a 90 elbow. I've got a 90 elbow over here. I've got a 90 elbow there. I've got a 90 elbow. There'll be one at the bottom there. And I can see that if I come down here, I've got one at the top, one at the bottom. So whether you want to measure from the top view or the side view, it's up to you. Just need to understand what you're doing. Carrying on around again, so I've got another 90 there. I'm just going to do a few basic examples. Same with flanges. Let me go into here. So I've got a flange there, I've got a flange there, there. So there we go. There's just a few examples. And I can select multiple dimension groups at once by holding down the Shift or Control key. And then we can see what we've measured. There we go. So that's a few examples there. And if I wanted to highlight the whole lot, I can actually just click on the folder. So if I click on that Material X folder, it highlights everything. So I can see the purples and the greens on there. Now I've only measured from the top view. Of course, if I'd measured from the side view, I would see those on there as well. So that's just kind of the basics. Again, let me just do a valve quickly as well. So I've got a few example valves. So let me just go around and just click them. Of course, they may be different sizes, different specifications, so you may need to split out rather than just having valve type X as I've got. You may have to have all the different types of valves, ratings, pressure ratings, etc., depending on what you're working on. So we can see there we've got some dimensions in there. So that's enough for this purpose. Or if I want to, I can jump over onto this side and I can do a bit of measuring there just to show you that. So let's measure some more valves. So I'll switch into point mode again. And if I was to do, say, some 200, I will switch into line mode. So I've got some there. If I click on I've got a 90 elbow in point mode. I've got a 90 elbow there. And same for flanges. I've got a couple of flanges there. I've got a flange there and there. So, I've measured off both drawings, and it tells me that I've measured off both drawings because both are now bold. Because if you've got lots and lots of different drawings in that list, the ones that are bold are the ones that have been measured from that current dimension group. If I was to click onto something else that I've not measured yet, say, for example, the 150 flanges, I've not measured anything, the quantity is 0, and both of the drawings aren't bold anymore. So moving on from the measuring side, let me jump over to my estimate. If I return up to the top level, what I'm going to do is press recalculate workbook. This updates the totals for me, and it says the cost of everything I've just measured based on my rates that I've just made up is 14,401. I've got some higher level summary information in here. So I've got the workshop labour cost, the site labour costs, material costs, I've got the weights, the workshop hours, the site hours, and then the total hours. So it's up to you what you want to put within there. So if I look into pipework as an example, and let's look at, say, this first item. So I've got the DN150 pipe, and that dimension group there is just linked to my DN150 pipe. So I've got 5 meters there. This is actually rounding up. So if I display more decimal places here, it's actually rounding up to 6 there. because it's set to 0 decimal places rounding. If I also change the rounding settings, you'll see it then changes. So it's actually 5.41, but if I set that back to 0 decimal place rounding, it is rounded up to 6. So the quantity comes through, whether it's the 6 meters squared for that or these others for the DN200s. If I go into the rates, we can see how I've calculated the rates. Double clicking into that cell, because it's blue, you can double click on it. You can see that I've broken down my workshop labour, my site labour, and my material costs. So I've said for each linear metre of pipe that we're talking about here, it takes 1.8 man hours in the workshop and 1.5 hours on site. That's pulling through there. The rates here are pulling through from a rate library. And if I wanted to see where they come from, I can press the show source. It opens up and it says, that's the rate that it's picking from. And then over on the other side, I'm using these user columns to pull out particular cells. So you can see I've got some fairly basic formula in here. So the workshop labour cost goes into this column, the site labour cost goes into that column, and the material cost goes into that column. If you want to rename these columns, user 1, 2, 3, it's very easy. You just open up the estimate properties, and within column names here, that's where you can just tweak those. So you can set the templates up how you want to. So that's an example for the DN150 pipe, and it's the same if I drill down into, say, a DN200 flange. Go into here, you can see for each flange, in this case I'm saying 2.3 man hours in the workshop and nothing on site, because the man hours associated with the spool that's been prefabricated is factored into the actual pipe length. Of course, how you want to estimate it is up to you. So those are the kind of the basics of setting up those rates. Over on the side now, you can see this is how I'm collating the information. I'm using this formulae in here called xSumRateUser. And what that does, this one in particular, xSumRateUser1, is it looks within that rate build-up and it pulls out the information contained in user column 1 and then multiplies by C2, so the quantity. So if I want to see where that comes from, xSumRateUser1, look into here, that is xSumRateUser1. So it's totaling up this column. Of course, there's only one value in it, so it's pulling out 61. And then it's multiplying 61 by the quantity contained within here. And that's how that formula is working. So that's how it's pulling out my workshop labour, my site labour, material costs. In here, I'm using another formulae, xGetWeight. Rather than over here, I'm using xGetLength. I'm pulling out the weight from the dimension group. Now, there's different ways to address or access the dimension groups. So you can see in this cell, by default, when you drag and drop your quantities in, it will insert, if I picked the 150 pipe and dragged and dropped it in, it would put a formula like this in, xGetLength, the dimension group name in speech marks, and then the rounding setting that I'd applied. Rather than me kind of locking my formulas down to that, particularly when you're doing templates, you don't want to have to manually change those values all the time. I don't want to have to change it 150 pipe, 200 pipe, 250 pipe, etc. So what I'm doing in actually these cases over here with, say, the weight field is I'm using the cell reference of B2. That points the system to this cell here, and it says look up DN150 pipe and pull out the weight. If I go to the cell below that, xGetWeight B3, so it's looking into the flange. Of course, because I've not measured anything, there's no value. But if I went down here, you can see that's how it's pulling out the information. So rather than having to use the dimension group name all the time in those formulae, xGetArea, xGetLength, xGetWeight, you can refer back to any cell really, but I'm using the description cell to just speed up that process. It's much easier than if you're chopping and changing things around. You'll know that your links will remain the same. Moving on beyond that, it's also, I've got an xGet custom, and what that's doing again with the B2 cell reference is it's looking into the 150 pipe group and it's pulling out the custom quantity for workshop hours. And again, just to remind ourselves, if I go into here, open up my 150 pipe, that's where it's pulling those out from. So these custom quantities, it's just pulling out the workshop hours and the site hours associated with the dimension group that's been referenced. Now, I've done that there, fairly sort of basic example, just got a couple of different line items in there. The structure that you want to use in the workbooks, you can have a level-based structure up to 9 levels deep. So, plenty of ability to structure things separately and have, different section perhaps for carbon steel, stainless steel. You can have your different sizes underneath that. It's best to be fairly consistent, and when you set out on the project or when you set out creating the template, is to agree that with everyone in the business. How do you actually want to structure this data? How's it easiest for everyone to use? And how do you actually want to summarize and collate the information at the different parent levels of the workbook? So going back up, that was the pipework section. If we go into the valve section, I've just got a single line item in there, very similar. In fact, the same formulae you can see here. Look within B2, pull out the site hours. So it's looking up valve type X and it's doing that. So, very basic. In actual fact, here I've not got the formulae working correctly. So let me just tweak that now. What I'm just going to do is a Control C and Control V and copy those across. So there we go. Return back to the top level. And you can see at this level, I've actually summarized things further. I've used a function here called xSumUser. So that's available from the function kind of list. If you're not sure what formulae to use, what particular custom costX formulae, you can press the function and it lists them all out. If you're not quite sure, you can click on help and it shows you. You can look within here. If you want to get a detailed explanation, you can click on it. So what this is doing here, as an example, is it will look within a particular column that you choose, and it will then return the total of that value. So in a case like this, xSumUser1 for this line item is going to look within there, and it's going to return the total of this column. So if I go into here, 3006, it's actually pulling that out. Now, I think I've got a slight error there related to my subtotals, but I'll fix that later on. But it just gives you an idea of how you can structure this information. So hopefully you found that useful. I've just done valves and pipework. When I was counting valves, instead of valves, it could have been pumps, etc. So now hopefully that gives you an idea as to how you can quantify the pipework, the process equipment that you may be measuring. And if you do have any more questions, then please get in touch with your local office. Please get in touch with our support line, and they'll help you through that. Okay, thanks everyone for watching. Hopefully you found that useful. As I've mentioned before, there's our link to our other videos. You can also get in touch with us on the support email address there if you have got any support questions. And also there's lots and lots of information available on our website. So hopefully you found it useful, and thanks for watching.